Aloha, I'm Ava, and I'd love to share my nursery with you today. We're caretakers of this beautiful property. The elevation here in Hawaiian Acres and lower Hawaiian Acres, Makai side is around 800. I don't know exactly. It's a little chilly at night. It's actually really good for propagating stuff because you can propagate like the higher stuff and the lower stuff, and it's cooler. So a lot of the transplanting stress and cuttings and stuff do a lot better because it's a little bit cooler. This property is 3 acres. And I've cleared about 1 acre here in the front. It's all by hand. We had 2 ducks for slug control, but our neighbor's dog got them. We have 2 rabbits for poop, so we get a little bit of manure, and it also kind of motivates me to weed a little bit every day. So most of what the rabbits eat is just from weeding. And collards, they love the tree collards. As far as plants go, there's a lot. I've got my root crop garden, which has some pig fencing around it. And I've got my vegetable garden. Those are kind of separate. So I've got all my veggies in one area and then all the root crops in another. And then I've got some container gardens, just experimenting with seeing how things do in containers versus on the ground. Like the propagation area of the nursery is right outside my front door. So that makes it really convenient because I visit it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. You know, I like the nursery. I like taking care of the babies, and I know it's something that a lot of people struggle with. And so I know that if I can give them a healthy, vigorous baby plant, then it sets them up for success. Plants are just like humans, where they say like the first 2 years or whatever are the most important for them developmentally for the rest of their life. Plants are the same. So they need a lot of extra nourishment to get set up for success. It does take a lot of love and a lot of knowledge base to get an excellent plant, and then that sets people up for success, because I just want people to feel successful in their gardens, and this is my way I can contribute to that. So starting with a nice sterile media. So I use coconut coir and black cinder, and then I mix in my microorganisms. So I buy a product called Dr. Earth, which is full of beneficial microorganisms, both fungus and bacteria. And then I also use bioflora. So having a fairly sterile medium to start out with, so you don't have disease present in the soil, that's gonna get you started off to a good start. And then adding in beneficial microorganisms. Many of those beneficial microorganisms aid in root development, as well as inhibiting disease. Those are 2 of the things that I've seen as a grower that are really helpful. So this is, where everyone comes to grow up. Some of the aspects of out here are the different levels of shade cloth. So this isn't the optimal setup, but it's what we have. So where the seeds are and the seedlings is like the highest shade cloth, like it's like 78% or something like that. So this is where the fruit trees germinate. And then this is like 50% in the middle. So when I take the trays out of the nursery, I'll bring them back here. So we're slowly upgrading. I had a big sale of trees, so we bought the shade cloth and the material for the hoop house. I like that I get to be fully present with my children, in that, you know, everything I use in my nursery is fairly baby safe. Like, it's not great if they're putting it in their mouth, but you know, I can put my baby in the potting mix and they can mix the soil with me. Like, my 2-year-old helps me plant seeds and transplant. Like, it's so cool. Like, it's just so cool seeing her empowered to, like, she's really excited to like plant stuff and go harvest her own food. You know, she can identify probably at least 100 different plants. So one of the things that I found to give you a good success whenever you're cutting your plants is putting a little alcohol on them. Definitely makes a huge difference doing my air layers, but also whenever you're taking cuttings, it really doesn't hurt to put a little alcohol on it and sterilize your tools, because infection is going to be your biggest reason for failure. This is a native plant that I want more of. And I've never propagated it before, so I'm not sure where the roots are going to come out. But doing a site selection for where you're going to cut it is kind of important. You can see where the nodes are. Where all this tissue is, they have things that are similar to stem cells in humans. So that's going to be probably where I'm most likely to get some roots to come out. So I'm going to cut it right under there. And then we'll plant these two just for fun. So I'm going to take that off, because if you put this under the soil, it's probably going to die. And then it's going to create a place for disease to spread. So then take off most of the leaves, which can be kind of brutal and can be a little heart-wrenching sometimes, but it really does help when you're doing cuttings or certain transplants, not all transplants, but certain transplants. Taking some of the leaves off can help it. What I have found is also important, most cuttings, is leaving the grow points. Because as I said, these little apical meristems are going to have hormones. And so if you cut that off, you're kind of cutting off its communication within the plant. So now it's telling it, oh my God, I lost my roots. I need to grow more roots. So you don't have to use aloe vera, but I did find with my air layers that aloe vera really helps with, because you're wounding the plant, right? So you're putting a little bit of medicine on that wound you just created. A lot of plants you don't have to use rooting hormone, but since it's a commercial nursery and I need a high success rate and I need fast turnaround time, I use the rooting hormone. I'll just plug that into our mix. I use a lot of black cinder because the roots also need to breathe. You want about 25% water, 25% air, is like what they say. And so having the black cinder really helps in those times where it doesn't stop raining for 3 weeks. I also find that the coconut coir is superior to the peat moss, because the peat moss just gets super saturated and then everything stagnates and dies. Whereas the coconut coir, even if it's not mixed with cinder, has a better drainage ability. So how do you know when to transplant, right? So the first two leaves are called the cotyledons, and then you can see they're starting to grow. There's its first true leaf. So this is not ready to transplant yet, but over here you can see where they have two true leaves. These would be getting ready to transplant. These are just going to go out in the garden, so I'm going to wait for them to get a little bit bigger. But for the ones in the little, you wait for the first two leaves, and obviously every plant's different. So like this one would be ready. Even though it's so tiny, this little oregano would be ready to go. These would be ready soon. You can see they got their first true leaves, and those are little tiny cotyledons. It is good. It can be a little hard to separate them, so that's why you saturate them with water first, because that'll make the roots pull apart really easily without breaking a bunch and injuring the roots. And they grow so much better when they're all individually spaced. So thinning is heartbreaking. I know thinning is heartbreaking, but it is actually really important, whether it's carrots out in the garden or your little nursery plants in their pots. They do so much better when they have their own space to spread their roots and grow, and they're not competing with anybody else. So how do you know when the plants that you've just transplanted are ready to get out of the full shade? Is I look at the very inside. You can kind of see how it's got this lighter green new growth. It's a little harder to see on these, but this one's put on some new leaves, and then this one's getting new leaves. So you'll see like right around these the base of the petiole, and then the new leaf growth. Once you start seeing that turn this bright light green, then you know that it's starting to put on new growth. And if it's getting new growth on the leaves, that probably means that you're getting new growth on the roots. Once the roots have new growth, that means that they're a little more hardy, and then they can go out onto into somewhere that they get some sun, like morning and afternoon sun. If you want to get into it, but you've never done commercial farming or nursery work, go volunteer. Go volunteer in a nursery or get a job in a nursery and get some practical experience, because the learning curve is steep and it's a lot of money to set up. So even though most of this was recycled material that Leanne had accumulated, it was still a considerable amount of money and investment before it started to make money. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed your tour and hopefully learned something along the way. Aloha!